Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to today's legislative webinar featuring several of our elected officials from the Tarrant County region. Thank you so much for being with us here today. For anyone watching, if you have any questions, make sure to post them in the chat feature. We'll try to keep an eye on that as we go. But we're just going to dive right in because we've got a lot of great things to discuss today. So here with us today, we've got Senator Kelly Hancock, Representative Nicole Collier, and Representative Craig Goldman. So Senator Hancock was first elected to the Texas Senate in 2012. He represents Senate District 9, which includes portions of Tarrant and Dallas counties. Apparently we just learned he just misses Emily's house, but we're still gonna call on him when we need things and pretend like he's our state senator. Currently, Senator Hancock serves as the chairman of the Business and Commerce Committee, the vice chairman of the Transportation Committee, and he's a member on the committees of Finance, Natural Resources and Economic Development, Property Tax, Mass Violence Prevention and Community Safety, and Redistricting, so he's pretty busy. Before his Senate service, Senator Hancock served 3 terms in the Texas House and 13 years on the Birdville ISD School Board. Senator Hancock is a champion of small business and helps run his own family-founded business. He also has a business degree from Baylor University. Senator Hancock and his wife, Robin, have been married for more than 30 years and have 3 children. They welcomed their first grandchild in 2018. So thank you so much, Senator Hancock, for being with us today.
Absolutely. It's interesting times. And yeah, it's interesting being a small business owner in this environment. And my wife, who has not worked for a while, was actually in working this morning. So it's a new world we live in.
Yeah, I said family-run business, and clearly it's just that. So next we've got Representative Nicole Collier. Representative Collier is a respected attorney, small business owner, grandmother, and mother of 3. She was raised in a family that valued public service, with her grandfather and father serving in the armed forces, and her mother serving children and youth ministries. Representative Collier is currently on her 4th term in office, representing House District 95 in Tarrant County. She's the first woman to represent this district, and she's also the first woman to serve as the chair of the Criminal Jurisprudence Committee since it was formed in 1879. So that is a really cool accomplishment. In addition to chairing this committee, Representative Collier also serves as the vice chair of the General Investigating Committee and a member on the Business and Industry Committee. Representative Collier graduated from the University of Houston and has lived with her husband Gary in Fort Worth for the last 18 years. Thank you so much for joining us, Representative Collier.
Well, thank you so much for having me and allowing me to be a part of this conversation to learn more about the industry and the needs of these business owners. And I appreciate the opportunity. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks.
Thanks so much. And last but certainly not least, we have Representative Craig Goldman. Representative Goldman won election to serve his first term as Texas State Representative in November of 2012. He represents District 97, which encompasses Southwest Tarrant County. Before taking office, Representative Goldman experienced a career in both business and politics. For nearly a decade, he and his family ran a retail gourmet food and fine wine store in Fort Worth. So I think he can really empathize with a lot of what we're going through right now. Representative Goldman's extremely proud of his Texas roots as a 5th-generation Texan and 4th-generation native of Fort Worth. He holds a Bachelor of Arts degree from the University of Texas at Austin, Hook 'em Horns, and is a partner in several real estate investment companies. Craig and his wife reside in Fort Worth, Texas. Thank you so much for being with us here today, Representative Goldman.
Thank you very much, and I'm proud to be with my colleagues, Chairwoman Collier, who's my classmate, and great to see Nicole, and of course Senator Hancock, as you mentioned, on every single committee in the Texas State Senate. So yeah, great to be with all of y'all. Thank you.
Thank you. So Emily, I'll kick it off to you first, and then we can just kind of dive in.
Great. So I'll just start. So we're new to this role, right? So I took this role in August after the long tenure of Richie Jackson, and I think maybe he knew this was coming, but nothing like leading through a pandemic, one of the most important industries we have in the state of Texas. You know, I guess I'm so glad first that you're here, and thank you for making the time, because I can imagine how busy you are. You know, I would say that from the 1.3 million employees that we had at the start of the year, roughly 70 billion in revenue last year to the state of Texas, right? In revenue dollars, about 5 or 6 billion in just tax revenue, just mixed beverage tax and sales tax, and 50,000 freestanding units, right? We sort of entered the year as a powerhouse, and we were seeing more of the national chain companies in our sector move their headquarters to North Texas. It's a great place to live. It's a great place to do business. And then the crisis hit, and I would say that what I'd love to know at this point is that we had hope in March, right? So we worked closely with the governor and his team, and many of you, and got curbside alcohol to go. Took that delivery bill that Senator Hancock knows so well, and we got it converted to curbside, and then we just got that expanded again, and it's given a lifeline. But now we're sitting here, and I would say to you, even from my seat, that I'm going from these small restaurant members that had hope to a very marked shift in the last 2 weeks to despair, and wondering what is the next day going to bring, right? Because what we're dealing with is uncertainty. PPP funding that's about exhausted, even with the extension that we passed with Congressman Roy, right? We helped develop that from the TRA. We don't have much to point to that tells them that in August, they're still going to be here. So I would love, and maybe Senator, I'll start with you, because you have a lot of experience in our sector as well, but we've got to do something, because we can't lose this industry. And right now we have 650,000 people unemployed. And that number is only going to accelerate as we don't see dining rooms get, they're not full. We don't see any return. We're trying to do the best we can with curbside to go. These are entrepreneurs. The grit is amazing. But sometimes even from our seat now, we are trying to drive that hope, but the legislature doesn't meet till next year, and the federal money's run out. What do we do, right? From your seat, like, we just can't afford for this just every day to see these mass closures.
Yeah, it's a difficult time, and no one knows how long we'll be in the environment we're in. Obviously when it first kicked in, we began working with the association rapidly to try to, and really my whole mindset in starting that push was to find ways to improve revenue for businesses that were being hit extremely negatively. And we were under the same situation. Our business dropped revenue by 40%. We weren't first to close, but just the entire impact of COVID, it's a ripple impact across every economic sector you can imagine, other than if you're a lab testing facility. So they're about the only ones that are benefiting in this environment. And unfortunately, we don't know how long we're going to be here. The chances are it's going to be an extended time, which forces everyone as a business owner to kind of remake themselves. So we can't sit where we're at today, and restaurant owners or business people, that they can't sit where they're at today and just say, well, I'm going to sit tight with my same model and wait till this comes back, because you're right. What the federal government did and how quickly they moved, and the president's action to force those funds so quickly and so rapidly down to business owners was a tremendous impact and absolutely necessary across the board. But there's no way the federal government can write a check big enough to sustain a business model throughout the time of COVID, just because you don't have an end date. And coming up with a business plan, that's how I always wanted. Tell me how long this is going to last. Tell me how much money I'm going to get, and I'll work out a balance sheet and a P&L to make it work. But not knowing the end date, so it really forces us as business owners to remake ourselves and recognize that we are in this environment. We're going to be in this environment for a while. And it's going to take out of the box thinking. It's going to take some good, hard moves on your balance sheet and on your P&L to come up with a sustainable model, which is what you've got to do, is you've got to come up with a sustainable model. The good news is every bank wants a sustainable model, right? They don't want to lose all those loans. And then every brick and mortar real estate agent, they want to maintain that lease. So everything right now is negotiable. And so what we've got to do as business owners is think very differently, recognize that we're here for a while, and renegotiate contracts, figure out ways to, at minimum, break even. And then hopefully once you get to that break even point, you can figure out ways to make money. And frankly, for the restaurant association, it may be increasing some pricing. It may be offering services in a different way, which, was something we tried to help with early on. So trying to ignore where we're at is not good. Trying to think it's going to be over in 30, 60 days is not realistic. And so it's coming up with new models of success, which, look, every restaurant owner is a risk taker, and they're creative and they're talented. And so it's taking that skill set and using it in a new environment.
Good. Representative Collier, anyone else have anything to add?
I mean, Senator Hancock has really summed it up very well. He laid it out. I would just say ditto to what he said. I really do believe we're going to have to reinvent ourselves in terms of the delivery model. I talked to a business owner, a restaurant owner here in my district, and she's transitioned to completely to go. And she's saying that it's working out for her. It's actually, the model is working out for her. So she has no plans to reopen in-store dining at her restaurant. So she's reconfigured her model of how she does business. And that's what all of us are going to have to do.
And Kelsey, sorry to jump in real quick, but that kind of leads me to believe sort of a question, which is going to be an interesting one, which is around delivery. So you saw this week Uber and Postmates purchase. We know that delivery companies in general, the fees can be astronomical to a restaurant, and that's not subjective, right? That's evidence-based. And so I appreciate, right? But doing the math on a balance sheet, and thankfully come from business as well, it doesn't always work when your rent in the building you're in, right? And that footprint, because I know we are going to see square footage come down. There's so much movement right now on how the sector is going to reimagine itself. But in the short term, if you're losing on every delivery order with a third-party delivery company, that's a challenge. But you don't have the infrastructure to build your own. And so do you see a world in Texas, and maybe this is leading into the next session and things we're thinking about, but you've seen a lot of states and cities cap those fees, right? Or take off some of the opportunity to have undisclosed fees, right? So improve transparency to the restaurant before they engage in that type of contract. Where do you all sit on that, the role of that third-party delivery? And clearly delivery and curbside are here to stay. But right now, the market is not in the favor of that restaurant owner, right? And that puts them in a hardship. And so, but we're also in Texas. So it's an interesting place to be. And so I just love your thoughts. I don't know if Representative Goldman want to start with you, but you're seeing this, states, but I also want to respect that we are in Texas and we like free markets. And, but I can't imagine with that, and that, I guess, acquisition scared me, because it makes just a behemoth of a company that can really just take the lion's share in Texas and be very hard to compete against for restaurants.
Well, yeah, and just to go back to the first question first, real quick, kudos to all the restaurant owners who really are entrepreneurs. I mean, who go out and start their own business, put part of their family fortune into the business, and are there every single day, open the door every day and close at night. And so these are the entrepreneurs and the entrepreneur spirit where we are right now, as far as how you have to adjust your business model in order to survive, in order to carry on. And I know a lot of restaurant owners here in Fort Worth. I've been speaking to a lot of them since March. Some literally shut the door day one and fired their staff and told them to take everything out of the kitchen. That's how they dealt with it, and said, we'll just wait till we can reopen. They're reopened now. Made deals with their landlords as far as their leases go. Others, like John Bonnell, said, okay, we're going to do curbside. And for $40, was doing meals for a family of four, and has been doing that ever since at Bonnell's here in Fort Worth. So, and he was up to doing 150 meals a day. That was his max he could do to go day after day, 6-7 days a week. So again, it's that entrepreneurial spirit as far as, how you're going to survive during this. As far as the to-go, I did not know this until I talked to many of those restaurateurs, that the extra fees that those delivery companies have on them, that we, the consumer, don't see. So I think that's, part of the discussion. I mean, I know when we do take out and have a delivery service do it, It's not that often, but when we do, yeah, the fees are astronomical, and you question whether or not you want to continue doing that rather than just go pick up. So I think it's part of the discussion now whether or not we're going to implement anything into. I just think it's too early to tell at this point.
And I will add on the third-party delivery fees, Emily mentioned transparency. I mean, we've seen instances of restaurants showing up on these delivery apps without any warning. You know, they didn't consent, they didn't agree to be part of this transaction, but suddenly they get an order and, you know, the customer doesn't know any of this, right? So if anything's wrong with the order, if the food just isn't compatible to be delivered, because that's of course one challenge that many restaurants face. Some food delivers better than others. You know, they don't complain to the delivery company, they complain to the restaurant. So that's another area where, you know, even in our sort of free market, I think we, as Texas, strive to have a level playing field where people truly can compete and customers can, you know, make a choice. So I'll just throw that out there for discussion as well.
I think that, you know, the Restaurant Association is a great place to start, to come together collectively and really almost create a co-op to provide competition. I mean, really the only thing, you know, what you see, when you see prices drop is when competition enters the marketplace. And fortunately, Texas, we're the 9th largest economy in the world. Who knows what we are after COVID? We may climb 4 or 5 spots with the way economics is changing on an international level. But we're a large enough economy that the Texas Restaurant Association could really put their thinking caps on and create a competitive model for Texas that would make it very, very difficult for some of these third-party services to compete. I mean, we're in a new environment, and we started out the conversation thinking out of the box. And so I would encourage creating a competitive environment to compete in that. Instead of trying to limit consumers' choices, I would improve consumers' choices at a lower rate that actually is better for the consumer and better for the restaurants.
That's interesting.
And I would just add that I was not aware, just like Representative Goldman, about the added cost that's passed on to the restaurant owners. You know, we have protections in place for consumers who are price gouged. And so maybe that's something that we have to look at for our business owners. Are they being gouged and charged astronomical fees for something that typically would not, you know, be there? So that's something that I would be open to entertaining.
Excellent. That's good to hear. And you're right. I think this is, as we're thinking about next session, and we know it'll be a challenging session for a lot of reasons, but we're also thinking about from the sector standpoint, as we do think about this new world we're going to operate in. I mean, I just don't want to get to a place where we only eat in our home and we never go out and have to be polite and practice all those life skills, you know, around a table and community. I think about even traveling around the world. So many deals I did were not even speaking the same language, but was around a meal, right, in a foreign country. And so I just hope the whole world doesn't go to curbside and takeout. You know, I know my daughters don't want me to cook anymore, so we need to get back out at some point. Kelsey, I'll turn it over to you to.
Sure. So I'm going to kind of take a step back here and just ask y'all the question that I'm getting most often, and probably the one Emily's getting most often too. Do y'all think we're going to see the reopening, you know, take a step backwards? Are we going to see restaurant dining rooms ordered closed again? Are we going to see local officials given the choice to close dining rooms again or reduce capacity? I'll tell you, many of our restaurants are watching, you know, Florida, California, or other states that are seeing spikes. And that's the number one call we get right now, because as you know, so many of these businesses are sort of hanging by a thread. And so they're just trying to see a day, a week out. So I'll pitch that to the group.
I'll be happy to start. I don't think so, and I hope not. But I don't think so either. I think where the governor really, where he was going a couple of weeks ago and shutting down the bars, unfortunately, was based on the data. And unfortunately, as some bar owners got shut down when they were practicing the right things. I have a good friend who owns a wine bar, and he was doing the right thing. They were social distanced. You know, they were, and even the craft beer people I know, they were doing the right thing. They mainly have outdoor tables and they were socially distancing. They got tied up in with all the bar owners. Unfortunately, for the bar owners who weren't following the rules correctly and opening back up, and everything was back to normal in their eyes. And there was no social distancing, as we've seen. If you saw the TABC video on some of those bars across the state, you certainly saw that. So unfortunately, the bad actors ruined it for the people who are doing good things and following the rules. So as the data came back, that's where the problems were arising, and the number of cases they traced back to the fact that it was going back to when they reopened the bars and people not social distancing. Like I've said, I've been in restaurants since they reopened. I think everybody is following where I've been. Everybody's following the rules properly. Tables are social distance. People are wearing masks now up until the time they sit down. So the good news is I don't think there'll be much spread, I hope not, in our restaurants to cause the data to come in to say that's where more of the problem is coming from and more cases are being spread in the restaurants. So I don't think they'll be curtailed any further, and I sure hope not, because I think they're doing a great job.
Well, and thank you, Representative Goldman. I really appreciate your emphasis on data, because that's really been our ask from the beginning is let's make these decisions based on data, not anecdotes. We all know there's bad actors in every business, right? We've all been in large box stores, right, and all kinds of places that weren't following the rules. So just the importance of using data to drive our decision-making. Senator Hancock, did you have something to add on that?
Well, I would agree. I think the governor certainly doesn't want to see a reduction in the economy. We know that when the economy slows down, whether it be natural or a virus hits, that the ones that are impacted the most are those lower income and minority. I mean, they're the ones that are going to get hammered. They're the ones that don't have additional income. They're not investing in the stock market. I mean, those are the ones that having negative economic consequences, they're the ones that will suffer the most. And so that's proven. That is data. And so we certainly don't want to go backwards on doing that. A big part of moving forwards is the mental attitude of everybody. That is why, I mean, in our office, when we go to desk, and I have minimal employees that still are operating here, that's put on the mask and go. It's not comfortable. I don't like it. It's annoying, but it provides a comfort to my employees that's certainly worth doing that. What we've got to do is continue to encourage, the association does, and members in the legislature need to do, is encourage people to act responsibly, but it's okay to still act. It's still okay to go out and eat. It's still okay, to do life. You don't have to board yourself up and go into a state of depression and creating another mental health crisis, which is on the brink. But we have to do it responsibly. And so it's kind of a balance there. And obviously the association can certainly help us do that.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. And we've really taken our responsibility in that very seriously. We rolled out the Texas Restaurant Promise, which are our sort of protocols of how to safely operate before restaurants were even allowed to reopen their dining spaces, because we knew that, it's one thing to allow business to reopen. It's another thing to actually encourage and earn your customers' trust so that
Right.
they actually come. And so that's really where we've focused from the beginning. We took it a step further and created a certification program with a grant from the Workforce Commission. So now 500 restaurants are going to be able to get this online training and also this secret shopper evaluation customer feedback component, all for free. So we're going to keep working on that, because it really is about building that trust. And to your point, Senator Hancock, if it's this all or nothing proposition, then people aren't gonna, no one can be perfect, right? Especially with no end date in sight. I mean, to ask people to never leave their homes again and never socialize is not realistic and not healthy. So how can we, do harm reduction strategies so that we're giving people options to be safe? Representative Collier, did you want to add on that?
Well, I was just going to add, I don't know if what the future holds in terms of whether we're going to have another shutdown, because I agree the data and the numbers will dictate that. I mean, we have to do what is important to protect the health and safety of Texans. And so, yes, sometimes that is requiring us to, take some steps backwards before we can go forward. But again, compliance is key, because the health experts have already indicated what works and what can help reduce the spread of the virus. And so, we have to have continued testing. We have to have tracing and isolation sometimes when you are exposed to it, and that can help. My daughter works in the restaurant industry. She's a server at a restaurant, and they've closed down multiple times because workers have come to work who have tested positive. So we have to be able to test and trace, test, isolate, and trace where these hotspots are, where the people are. And we have to have people comply with, the orders, the requirements that, the things that work that help to slow the spread of the virus.
That is a perfect segue to another concern we hear from restaurants all the time, which is, one of my employees was out socializing or doing whatever, might have COVID, so now we need to test everyone. And many of them are spending thousands of dollars that they really don't have, and oftentimes having to wait weeks to get the results back. And so then they're in this really impossible situation of, do they have enough employees who haven't been exposed to work? What that sort of risk management system looks like. So would love to hear from y'all, and I'll start with Representative Collier since you triggered this thought. What can the state and our local officials do to really ramp up our testing and contact tracing to make sure that it truly is accessible to everyone who needs it? I know we've done a lot to build up our supplies, but clearly there's still a big demand there. So what can our state and local officials do to help with that?
Well, yes, the state of Texas has started ramping up, but the problem is that we didn't have enough test kits in the beginning. The federal government is trying to play catch up and to ensure that we have additional resources available to do the testing. So we were already behind, so we didn't have enough testing kits available to test those. And so the state is in the process of getting out there and expanding. And for those local governments that receive direct aid, they too can also play a role in providing testing opportunities for the community and those owners. But I got to ask, how many of our restaurants offer health insurance to their employees? So that, if that's, that's one of the issues, that we have one of the highest uninsured rates in the nation. So we, the people that work there are already at a disadvantage oftentimes when they don't have access to health insurance, and then that turns on and becomes a obligation of the county or the state somehow. So making sure that our workers have those basic needs like health insurance and earned paid leave. These are things that are important to ensure that our workers have the confidence to return to work as well. So I think that, increased testing is definitely needed. Contact tracing is important so that we can identify those who've been exposed. But of course, the state, those businesses have the same, opportunity to have their employees go to the state, the local government testing areas and participate there.
Senator Hancock, you're smiling like you've got something to add.
Well, I mean, we had this discussion at our office at our work today, and we all have to remember that yes, we were behind initially on testing. You know why? Because there was no test for COVID. We didn't have tests for COVID until we had COVID. Then we had to develop a test. The original test took nearly a week. You had to send it off to the CDC and get it back. Now it's we've expanded now. There's 30-minute tests available, so you have the rapid test available. So we've come so very far. And the good news is that the Trump administration has provided a significant amount of funds to local counties to expand that. I know Tarrant County received $270 million to help with COVID. So far, only $7 million of that has gone towards testing. So there's funds available to help expand the need for testing. I know when they expanded testing, there was not this upsurge in cases. So literally they had test sites that they had opened up and there was nobody ever in line to get tested. There was very few people participating. So then they tried to shift it around. So we're in a state where we're trying to guess what the market's going to be for testing and where it's going to be and who's going to want to be tested and who doesn't. And frankly, government's not very good at guessing what the market wants. Restaurant owners are probably much better than that on doing that. So I think we're continuing to fight that and continue to do a great job in the testing arena. We got to also remember that we forget the media is quick to tell us how many people have tested positive. Well, initially we were only testing people with the most severe symptoms. Now we're testing a lot more people and we're finding a lot more cases, which is something we talked about from the very beginning. The more people you test, the more people you're going to find positive, and then therefore the number of cases is going to increase. So the focus can't be on the number of cases when you're doing the data, because that foundation point has shifted so much on your base data that is not really the good data. There are good data. Hospital beds filled, deaths is another good data point, but those tested and found positive with the virus, that's a very, very difficult comparison to have today versus even a week ago.
And I'll just jump in because we speak about the allocation of the CARES Act, right, at the local level and also the state level. And so one of the things that's been very important to us is we put together, and I'm sure you've seen it, but the Texas Restaurant Survival Plan, right? And it was like, it's not just, and to your point, we can't continue just to write checks. That's not going to sustain us long term. That's not a good strategy. But at the same time, there's things like liability protection, right? Foreclosure protection. There's regulatory. We've been working closely with Comptroller Hager, right, to see where our members can work directly with his office, right? If we need a payment plan to just preserve some liquidity right now. Right. One of the big parts of our ask is, and I'm not going to say it right, Kelsey, so I'm going to just not say the acronym, but it's the Food Service Industry Recovery Fund. And it's the idea that, and we agree, right? We've got to transition. And that's what I love about being in Texas is it is a free market, and the entrepreneurial spirit in our sector. I just actually had someone from a national magazine say, there's no place that will recover with the kind of innovation that Texas has, right? Especially in our sector. We innovate. So many new concepts come from Texas. But the cost for us to shift, even if you think about the restructuring of our restaurants, right, to now build out huge curbside and to go to all the technology investment for contactless, all of that is great. But to a small business owner, the funds are not there because they're running at 50% capacity, or they're getting clocked by the delivery fees and making $7 per meal, right? And they're trying to bring their employees back at the same time that they're also going out because they're COVID positive, right? There's a lot of dynamics, but the pressure point we asked for, out of the $6 billion that went to the state, we asked for $390 million, which I don't know, I think that's pretty reasonable. And it would help about 15,000 restaurants be able to use funds to make, PPE, sanitation, all the things. I mean, believe it or not, none of us would be here if we'd bought stock in a plexiglass company 3 months ago. But that stuff's expensive, and they're doing all the right things to keep people safe, but it comes at a cost. And we feel like that CARES money is really geared towards investing in business that was hurt, right? Economic impact of the COVID crisis. And so what are your thoughts? We're lobbying Governor Abbott really hard for this right now because we know it's where it's sitting, but it would just make such a difference to a sector that really has to physically change as well as its business model. What are your thoughts about that?
I could just jump in really quickly too, right? It's not like we just suffered losses because of a bad business deal. It's the state of Texas ordered dining rooms to close for 6 weeks. So you had a very, it's not I just want to frame it as this isn't a situation where the industry just screwed up and lost a bunch of money and now wants a government bailout, right?
Well, and let me also add, just because I'll pile on real quick, only because I see Senator Hancock smiling. At the same time, right, Feed Texans, because we're 51% of the food dollars, we passed the retail waiver with Governor Abbott to be able to actually go to the hard hit and a lot of low income areas and turn our restaurants into small grocery stores at very low prices because people weren't getting access to food across the state, right? Because grocery stores were being overrun in the first couple of weeks. So, close your dining room, but you need to stay open. You need to do it unprofitably, and maybe there'll be help to come. And so I think that's feel like if you're a restaurant owner, part of it is that spirit of like, man, we've just done everything. And every kid who had a T-ball fundraiser we've paid for the last 10 years, like who's going to help us? And so the recovery fund was an idea to say, let's use CARES Act money because we know at the state level, the budget between oil and gas, us, everyone else will be in stress. But we don't know how to get it over the line, I guess. That's my very direct ask, I guess. Representative Goldman, I want to make sure we, you're like, I'm not touching that.
First? No, look, I'm with you. And I understand, how much we got from the CARES Act. And he's going to kill me for saying this, but your state representative has a big say in where that money is going as well as chairman of Appropriations Committee, Chairman Capriglione. So I know he's in constant contact with the governor's office on it, and they are methodically going through and spending every single dime wisely. One of the big purchase items that he said that they actually had to spend money on was providing gloves and masks to our first responders and hospitals across the state. And just think how much money that is. So I'm not saying you're not worthy, but I'm certainly saying that there's a whole bunch of people who are asking for this money. And, I'm not, maybe Senator Hancock is more privy or Chairwoman Collier is more privy to how they're distributing the money, but I just know in talking to Chairman Capriglione, they are methodically going through every single dime, making sure they spend it wisely. And they haven't spent it all and don't plan to spend it all immediately so as not to respond and not think things through. That's I think you're on the right path to keep talking to the governor's office, talk to Chairman Capriglione and Senator Nelson as well, who's chairman of Senate Finance.
And tell them that you said it's a great idea.
Tell them that I said, right.
Might help my cause.
See how that far that gets you.
Yeah, I'll test the waters. Representative or Senator Hancock?
Well, one of the things is all these funds are designated to be COVID specific. And we talked about, and they're trying to get the funds, the feds, and I think it was very instrumental is getting the funds down to the lowest level of government. And I mentioned Tarrant County before. Tarrant County got millions of dollars, and a large portion of that is designed for business owners, to be distributed to business owners negatively impact. So I would encourage the association not to put all their eggs in the governor basket, but recognize that your counties, your large cities, it varied. Your large cities, your large counties all have millions of dollars that are designed to be distributed to business. So I would not do 100% towards the governor in the state, because really our role, the way the funds were distributed up, our role is more for the smaller cities, the smaller counties that did not get the funds direct. So your first place to go, my guess is for the vast majority of your members, would be to your large cities and your large counties that were given that money directly, not through state government, but directly, and they will be distributing those funds to those negatively impacted by COVID. So my guess is the vast majority of your members are going to be in those 6 large cities, and then the 10 to 12 large counties that receive direct funding specifically designed for business owners. So that's probably where I'd encourage you to put more of your effort than the governor's office at this point, because it was designed.
We have, you'll be proud of us. We have. So we're definitely trying to get both angles.
Yeah.
Great point to remind our restaurants watching that our county tracker has the links for the cities and counties that have done, as Senator Hancock mentioned, a program to help businesses impacted by COVID. So that is a great place to look.
And it could help.
Our smaller cities and counties also want to do something like that. They're running up against the state put some parameters on how much money from the CARES Act the smaller cities and counties can be spent to help small businesses. So that's an issue we're sort of working out still. But Senator Hancock's right. A lot of our cities and counties have really jumped in and recognized that if we don't invest to help our small businesses, because we're talking about Main Street, right? if we don't help Main Street stay open, they're our number one employer, they're our number one tax generator. It's going to have a significant ripple effect for the years to come. So I appreciate that.
Well, I mean, we don't get to say much positive about the federal government, but the way they've handled addressing business needs, you know, has really been very unique and extremely beneficial.
And I would just add about the, I agree with the suggestion that you start with the local government who received direct aid. Tarrant County is one of them. They received direct funding because that $6 billion that you referenced at the state, there's so many hands that are out that need this money. There's so many entities and agencies that are in need of this money that don't have access to the local government. So that is something that we would definitely suggest that you do. And in terms of whether, you know, that 300,000 or so that you mentioned, I wouldn't, you know, just come right out. I would, you know, want to inquire to make sure that that money, if you do get it, it would trickle down to the small mom and pop restaurants. And I'm not talking about these chains here. I want to see this go to these small restaurants that are in, you know, communities that are underserved or in rural populations, to make sure that they have the ability to stay open and stay afloat. So, you know, those are things that I would, you know, want to ask and consider before I would support any type of dissemination of state funds, you know, on my personal opinion.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Emily, go ahead.
No, and I think Kelsey, you're probably going to the same place, but I love that you said that, because my initial concern with the PPP, and it got adjusted out, was that we sort of had winners and losers early, right? So if you had a lot of resources, you were front of the line. Our restaurants tended to be at the back of the line because they didn't have lending relationships or they were small business. So our community banks stepped up huge. And then we got that second round, right? And now we still have money in the program, and the extension that was signed, which was very exciting last week. One of the parameters we had put in our ask was a lottery-based system, right? We didn't want to have the large chains and demonstrated loss, right? So if you have 3 drive-throughs and you're just accelerating growth, you should not qualify for this, right? There needs to be some mechanism, because my concern is the same as yours, Representative, is that those small businesses that also employ those local people, and our sector is 47% minority, and it's hurting, right? And we've got to get these people back to work. And so that's what those, and I'm glad we're so aligned, because that's a big focus for us right now, is we can't lose those restaurants in the crisis. And it's the same conversation before we jumped on about this next round of PPP that we're working really hard for at the federal level, right, with our delegation, is to say, let's target it towards the hardest hit and demonstrate a sense of loss in order to qualify. Because I know Senator Hancock probably agrees, it's just writing another check for trillions of dollars isn't really an option. But those small businesses and the hardest hit in our small, I mean, some of our communities around Texas, of our 254 counties, some of them, our industry is their number one industry, right? I mean, it's eating and beverage and hotel, and right. And so if that were to collapse, it just has just horrible implications. So we totally agree. We know that looking down a barrel of no end in sight, and all that has to happen to transform the sector, that we're just looking at a lot of cost. And now the fatigue is hitting so many of these folks that they're saying, you know what, I'm out. And this is a resilient bunch, as you've said, right? I mean, you're crazy to get into our industry, but that's why we all joined it, because it's a little crazy. So, Kelsey, do you want
to have that on video, Emily?
This streaming live? Actually, can we just transition to alcohol, Kelsey? Because I think this has been.
Let's do that.
This is one of my favorite topics.
It's almost 3. Why not?
Yeah, you know, like, hey, no, I promise it's
a little different, right? It's like, when does happy hour really start with COVID?
It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
It is. I used to live in Key West, so we use that all the time. So here's interesting, right? This has been this has really been a godsend for us, because when we were able to get curbside to go early, right? Take the delivery bill, convert it, make it very easy. You saw restaurants really start to generate revenue by getting food. And then when we got dialed back on Friday, we sort of had submitted a proposal. We were able to get all 3 tiers aligned. Our colleagues have been so supportive. And they're like, okay, we get it. We can see the pain. We're going to do this, right? And then we got the beer industry, all 3 tiers, and we've got a proposal in for growlers. Clearly, we want to solidify that legislatively next session. And so I would love your thoughts on the likelihood of that happening, because I think we've demonstrated we can do it safely. We've demonstrated it's a lifeline from a revenue standpoint. And I don't know, I was told it's really hard to get all 3 tiers to agree, and we've done that, right? Maybe because when you're new, you just don't know any better, right? Kelsey, we're both. So we've
everyone definitely has some scars from trying to get the 3 tiers to agree on something.
But so I just think it's such an opportunity from a revenue standpoint for the state. It's good. Consumers want it. We've done some surveys across the state. They said we like this option, that we can go to one place and get something to go with our food order, right? Again, they're not going in that dining room, but what are the chances do you see this as something that, because we feel great about it, but having the 3 of you here, I love your thoughts. No one's going to go first.
Who do you want to start? I'll start.
I'll start with you.
Okay, I'll start. So I do sit on the licensing committee and have for the last 3 sessions where all these type of bills go through. And all I can tell you is be on the licensing committee. I can tell you, expect the unexpected. So, nothing is for sure. The likelihood, I can't tell you. But I can tell you there'll be certainly a number of bills written, and I'll be writing my own to try and help the industry, absolutely. But as far as likelihood, there's no way to tell you today if that's something like that is going to pass.
As he's smiling.
Well, it's just wait till you experience the committee. I mean, again, and here's the next problem. Is we're going to have a new speaker next session. We don't know right now who the committee chairman is going to be. We don't know who the members of the committee are going to be. Now, likely, if, considering if all members return, it's one of the #1 committees requested, especially by senior members. So you have a good idea who's going to be on there. But again, the committee chairman controls so much of the legislation. Now, having said that, we didn't have a committee hearing on beer to go for the craft beer men and women last session. We had a bill, but we never had a hearing. And so what happened, Eddie Rodriguez offered an amendment on the floor and it passed. And then it passed the Senate and the governor signed it. So when I say anything goes in regards to the 3-tier, the liquor, the beer, wine, anything does. I thought I had a very good bill last session to help the restaurant industry, and it was shot down by a couple of your members. So I'm going to work with them to craft a better one so that everybody wins. And I think I have a very good idea that will help your membership in regards to that, especially through this. So again, there's no way to be certain on any piece of legislation when it comes to this, because it really is a wild, wild west when it comes to liquor, beer, and wine bills in the House and the Senate.
That's a very fair answer. You're right. It's just, we're trying to think about all the things that have worked, right? So what's bred this entrepreneurial and frankly collaboration that we haven't seen across the sector. We passed another waiver I didn't mention where we can have our restaurants sell the prepared food in grocery stores, another lifeline, right? And so we'd love to see that long term. So just industries or even individuals that didn't tend to collaborate before, I think the crisis has really driven that entrepreneurial spirit, maybe less of a territorial spirit that I would just love to see solidified, right?
Yeah, and to that point, when we had our retail store here, we had Saint Emilion, one of the best restaurants in Fort Worth. He was only open at night, so he brought in meals to go, packaged meals to go that sold tremendously in our store. Well, then what had happened? Fort Worth Code Compliance came in and said he wasn't labeling them correctly and weren't packaging them correctly. So he said, forget it, I'm not going to do it. So when regulation comes in and prohibits things like that customers weren't enjoying, then there's a problem. So again, there's just lots of discussion has to happen of what can work and what should work. But absolutely, bottom line is we have to. What's best for the consumer is what we have to do, and certainly what's best for people in your association.
Yeah.
Well, and our office has been tracking all that. I mean, the staff's done a tremendous job. The Senate Business and Commerce, we handle, a $1.7 trillion economy. 1.5 of it comes through our committee, and so we handle a few industry issues on there. So we've been tracking all of this, both the rules and regulatory changes that have been made by the governor, but also there's been a significant amount of rules and changes that were made at the agency level. And so we've tracked them all. We have a Senate business, really just kind of a working group. Just it's really more just open for discussion on, hey, what changes were we able to accomplish, which has been very beneficial for business from a government standpoint, and a reduction of rules, reduction of regulation in order to spur the economy amidst COVID, and getting those senators' input on ones that they view favorably and ones they feel like didn't work. And I will tell you, across the board, this has been one of the ones viewed most favorably by those individuals. And it's what's been exciting for me as Chair of Business and Commerce is seeing many, many things that have been positively impacted about getting government out of business's way, getting, whether it be license renewals or, or you name it. Just so many changes that from a business standpoint, and especially as chair of the committee, it's really exciting to see the potential positive impact that we could have in Texas for the economy and for business owners across the board.
Yeah, I have the same optimism. I mean, I think that's what we have to take from this, right? To wallow and sort of wonder isn't going to get us anywhere, but looking at, again, all that collaboration and spirit and entrepreneurism, and then solidifying that without the regulatory and representative. I mean, you mentioned that the meals were going really well and HEB was a great partner. And then someone stepped in and said, hey, listen, we need to do all this packaging and regulating. And so the margin just started to erode. And so I worked with Health and Human Services. I think it was Kelsey and I, and we went back and reshaped that, right? And then had a waiver created so we could actually have one set of rules, and we didn't have lots of, I mean, it was sort of crazy, right? It was more labeling that you would even get on something that down to the 1 ounce. And so we were able to get that cleaned up, to your point, because we saw something that started to take off and then they wanted to kind of stop it. And you saw restaurants that were surviving by putting those meals. And frankly, then consumers could go to one place and get everything they needed, right? Which we love that too.
Well, and I don't know how many people were aware of the behind the scenes conversations on the mixed beverage to go. But the agency actually wanted to make it more difficult on individuals than third parties. I mean, and so we had to work with them to go, no. We wanted minimalistic rules on this, not see how many and how broad you can create rules over this legislative issue. And so we kind of had, we worked on changing their mindset, because their mindset was not in tune with the author of the bill's mindset when he passed it, or the expansion of allowing individuals to take home. It wasn't, it was, there was a chance it was going to be actually really difficult, and it didn't end that way, thank goodness.
Thank you. Representative Collier, did you have anything to add on alcohol to go?
I think that, it's been working out thus far. I'm, interested in seeing the outcome, if there's any type of setbacks that are had with the consumer or the restaurant businesses, but it seems very promising to be able to offer that. And just as a gut feeling, it seems like it would be even safer to be able to deliver it to the person's home where they would stay, perhaps, instead of getting out in their car. So, and I have a restaurant that makes one of my favorite mixed drinks. I don't do it well when I get it home. So I'd rather you do it than me do it. So if that's an opportunity that could be had, then I'm all for that. But I have ordered food before all this happened, and the alcohol was provided. And, the margarita was made at home and I was able to adjust it. But those specialty drinks that I get, I want those to come straight from the restaurant.
Now you can do it. And I think it's important too. We have to talk about safety here anytime we talk about this. And the proposal we worked on, again, with all 3 tiers, really, I think, went above and beyond in terms of safety. We required it to be sealed. We required it to have a bag with a zip tie, so it was truly tamper-proof. Has to be transported in your trunk or behind the rear seat. So, when you compare that to sort of we all know you can go into 7-Eleven and buy alcohol right there, right? So we really feel like we built in some protections around that, just to make sure we're being good stewards.
And we brought back the 80s zip tie, which, that was impressive.
Hey,
Yeah, none of us have any investment interest in the zip tie business. I just want to make that.
But you cannot find a zip tie apparently at a Home Depot in Texas in case you go to look.
Well, we've just got a couple minutes here, so I really just want to give you each a chance to kind of make any closing remarks. Again, we're just so appreciative for your time and for your investment and for your leadership. We know that you are juggling a lot, just like our members are right now. And so we're just very appreciative. I've also been told by my regional executive director to promote for all of our restaurants listening on July 29th. There's an opportunity to hear from Dr. Emily Williams-Knight for Tarrant County folks specifically. All right. Emily's forgotten this.
I know that.
The Tarrant County Restaurant Association is having a meeting. Please make sure you register for that ahead of time. It's going to be a great opportunity to talk about how we build a really great association in Tarrant County to protect all of the good work. So that's my plug. And now I'm going to turn it over, Senator Hancock, any closing remarks?
yeah, I just want to encourage everybody to, and the association to provide a format for feedback, to discuss in the association of what's working, what's not working, so that your members are able to share the success stories that they have, and really never forget that, Texas for years has been an easy place to come and do business. It's been an easy place to live, but that's not really who we are. I mean, Texas was formed by people that knew they were coming into a very difficult land. It was formed in the desert in certain spots. And so we've got a tenacity within us that you may have to dig down and find again. And I don't care if you were born here or if you've moved here, but you are Texan now. And so I just want to encourage you to don't give up on this fight. Look, the only reason that we have big chain restaurants is because they steal ideas from you. Smaller restaurants, right? They get them and they expand upon them so that other people across the country can experience real Tex-Mex food. They expand them across because they can find out how real seafood is supposed to be cooked. And so, I mean, don't give up on where we're at. We're going to get past this at some point. Just hang in there, encourage one another, and share your points, the changes that you've made, the successes, share them with one another. So we still need to find time and room to celebrate amidst COVID.
Thank you, Senator. I like that. Representative Collier.
Absolutely. Yes, thank you so much. I agree, with what Senator Hancock was saying about making sure that you contact your representative. When you have these agency changes and they are not helpful in protecting the worker or the employee, the employees or the public, and they're just more of an impediment, you need to let us know. When the franchise taxes are overwhelming and you can't get an extension, you got to let us know, because that was a movement earlier in this year when we first started COVID-19, where there were your members were concerned about meeting the needs of paying their taxes. And so when we got together as legislators, we were able to put a mechanism in place that would help offset or ease that burden. It didn't remove it, but it helped ease it by delaying some of the things, because we do rely on your tax dollars to fund the state agencies. But definitely let us know what is going on, what works, what doesn't work. We're here to serve you. And so we appreciate your feedback on how we can improve the lives of Texans.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Goldman.
Well, that's a great point Chairman Collier made. First and foremost, thank you for the time and thanks for inviting me to be on this. Like I said, the people in the restaurant business mainly are entrepreneurs, and you put your time and treasure into your passion, because that's what it has to be. And we don't want to see anybody on Restaurant Impossible. We don't want Robert Irvine to have to come in this state and try and save you. So we want to be there for you. We want to be your Robert Irvines, if you will. We want to be there if there's anything we can do legislatively to help you. Like we talked about, if we need to pass things next session, especially like the liquor to go, beer, wine, liquor to go. if that's helpful to you and good for the consumer, we're all in. So stay in touch with us, stay involved next session as best you can. That's probably the number one takeaway is if you want something or need something, and I think Chairwoman Collier and Senator Hancock will back me on this. When you guys come to Austin, you personally, you business owners, and say, this will be helpful for my business, or this regulation that we have is not helpful to business, we're going to listen and we're going to respond. So thank you for having a great association. Thanks for being involved, and we look forward to working with all of you, not only this fall on legislation, but certainly to get it passed next session.
Thank you, Representative, and we will definitely take you up on that offer. We plan to be very present. I don't know what that's going to look like next session.
Yeah, whatever that looks like. That's a great point.
But we'll be there. Emily, any final thoughts to wrap us up?
Yeah, I mean, first, the three of you are just so impressive. And I sit here, right? I live in Tarrant County, and I just feel truly grateful because you listen, you get it, and you act. And I just think if you're a citizen here who's watching, right, our membership that are your constituents, they should just feel great about, like you said, just picking up the phone, having that conversation, because we are in certain times. And I want to focus, I mean, Senator Hancock, I think you're a Baylor grad, correct? So right before this crisis, I was raised in Connecticut. The only thing you have in Connecticut is women's basketball, right? So I'm a diehard UConn Husky fan. And right before this happened, I got to fly with the Baylor women's team up to Connecticut. And I don't sit well, which you probably can sense. And so, 20 minutes in, I'm in the back of the plane because I can't sit. And here comes the coach. And we actually just had the conversation you had, which is in a crisis. And we were talking about how young women, it was really focused on women of all different types, right? They lose confidence at a certain age. And how do you, when the going gets hard, stop, look at the environment and say, I got to do something different? It's a mind shift. And I love that you connect that to this, because I think we've all, as an association, right, we're on the front line and we're getting these calls, and sometimes they're crying. People are losing everything. They're letting their employees go. I mean, it's real. This is a real crisis. And we had to kind of take a step back and say, you know what, if we stop believing that it can get better, we're all dead. And so I just want to reiterate to your point, I think when you were speaking of Coach Mulkey, right, which is the worse it gets, the better you should rise. And so I think that's really, we are Texans and we have grit and we have an opportunity to turn this into really a terrific outcome. I don't know how long it's going to take, but that spirit, everyone, all of our members, we have to have it. And to have these types of elected officials that are willing to listen and wanting to help, I'm super excited about next session. I don't know if we'll be doing it from here or the Capitol, but making that case, but that spirit of not giving up, I'm just so glad to end on that, because I think it's just such a perfect message.
Absolutely. And we're going to make Texas better.
Yeah. And it's pretty good right now.
It's pretty good.
Well, thank you, all of you. Thank you, Kelsey, for doing this. This is your idea, so I love it.
Thank you all very much. Have a safe day, and just thank you again.
All right. Thank you much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Bye-bye.